Welcome to the Win, Make, Give podcast. Chad Himes here, joined by my friend Bob Stewart. Bob, how are you today?
Chad, I'm fantastic. I am fantastic. I didn't even know this thing we're about to talk about exists.
Not until we had this interview with Martin that we just did. We really hope you enjoyed that in the last episode of Win, Make, Give. He mentioned two letters that went together that just blew both of our minds, Bob, and those were?
AQ.
AQ. Now, what the heck is AQ stand for as we jump into this, Bob?
Well, Martin would help us understand. It means adversity quotient.
Okay. Yep, it sure does. Now, Bob, there's all those letters out there, right? We're starting to get every letter of the alphabet goes before a Q, it sounds like, right? We got IQ, which stands for?
Intelligent quotient.
And then you just gave away the next one, right?
EQ.
We got EQ, which is?
Emotional quotient.
Right, our emotional intelligence. Heck, we did a whole series, episodes 11 through 16 from season 1, where we broke down the different pieces of how to measure your EQ. But Bob, let's talk about those first, right? Because it used to be all about IQ.
Yeah.
Right.
We used to growing up, like when we were growing up, I don't know the EQ or AQ. Like I'd never heard of those things growing up.
Not at all.
Right?
IQ was the test we would take, right? Here's what IQ measures. It's your memory. It's analytical thinking. It's mathematical ability. And the rumor is, because I'm not a scientist, but the rumor is that IQ is something you're born with and does not change.
Yeah.
So you knew that guy in school or that girl in school that had a real high IQ.
Yeah, totally.
Right? If you watch Big Bang Theory, that's Sheldon.
Yeah.
Right? Had that real high IQ or whatever it was. But it was math, it was analytical thinking, and it was memory. That didn't necessarily mean anything other than you were probably going to be a scientist or a mathematician.
And you were probably going to get good grades in school because our schooling's all about memorizing and yeah.
Okay. Then came EQ, the intelligent or emotional intelligence.
Right.
Broke down into multiple pieces of how you measure it. That measures your interpersonal, self-regulation, and communication skills. This is something that can be developed over time.
Absolutely. And something that we spent a bunch of time talking about and giving lessons on how to develop those things, again, in season 1, episodes 11 through 16.
Yeah, so just so everyone remembers, that's your self-awareness, right? That's self-regulation, that's motivation, that's empathy, and then that's your social skills. Those are those pieces of the emotional intelligence or the EQ, which can be developed. And Bob, the new kid on the block, you said was?
Adversity quotient,
yes.
AQ.
And that is for determining success in life now. So Bob, we went from IQ to EQ to AQ. Why are we getting these changes in these things of what matters?
Look, I think like if you look back and think back like in the 80s, you know, back then, Chad, like I think you've told us like your dad was kind of in one career, right?
Yep.
For most of his life. Like my father too had one career. He still is in that career. People back then tended to work like in an environment for a long period of time, right?
Yep.
More recently, as the world started to change, some of these jobs aren't even out there anymore, right? There's this like breakneck speed of change in the workplace,
Ooh, I like that.
right? Like things are constantly evolving and moving, and technology has accelerated the pace of change to the point where people's ability to like deal with this breakneck pace of change is becoming more and more important, right?
Sure. Memorization doesn't matter as much. Mathematical skills, the computers are doing so much of that for us now that back in the 80s,
I had a teacher that would say, you know, some version of, you know, you're not going to have a calculator in your pocket your entire life. Like that's why you got to memorize your times tables or whatever, right? And I'll be darned, today we have a calculator in our pocket at all times.
At all times.
So like the things that you need to be successful,
Great
right?
point.
Like Google's out there. Like I don't got to memorize the presidents in order anymore, right? I'm not sure why I ever needed to know that, by the way, but like
you don't even need to know all 50 states.
yeah, most of those IQ, like those answers are out there. They're easily at our fingertips. We've got the answers to IQ in our hand at all times now.
Sure.
Right? Emotional intelligence, I think, is always going to be important, but this idea that like the world is changing and my ability to adapt and change with it as a, you know, reflection of how successful I'm going to be in the workplace, AQ makes a lot of sense.
You know, while we were talking about AQ in that interview with Martin, and we both wanted to learn more about this because we said that's an episode on its own. We've got to figure it out. I found that IBM did a study not too long ago, just 2019, that they said over the next 3 years, so I'm going to guess that the years probably changed a little with the COVID bump they weren't anticipating at that time, that 120 million people in the world's 12 largest economies will probably need to be reskilled just because of automation, right? So that's, you have to be ready to adapt. So AQ is here, Bob. Tell me, how is AQ truly defined for everybody listening?
So AQ is defined as the ability of an individual to think, manage, direct, and endure challenges and difficulties in life.
Okay.
There's actually tests for this that you can take, and we found a variety of them, but it's a score that measures the ability of a person to deal with adversity.
Okay. And they say that AQ is actually a probable indicator of success. So Bob, you mentioned tests. There are a few tests out there that you can go take. You can go search for Adversity Quotient. I found a few that you had to pay for to take. I found one free version out there. The original version that came from Dr. Paul Stoltz, who's the gentleman who conceptualized what AQ is. He had a test to take. 20 questions. You score yourself on a scale of 1 to 5 based on the question. Add up the scores, multiply, right? Average score is 147.
Look, I think like these tests, there's bias in these tests and there's whatever, right? And you take it one day and you get a score, and you take it a week later when you're feeling a little bit more, resilient, and you test a little bit better. But I think that, if you were to take this test over a long period of time, a couple different, it's probably going to figure out pretty well like who you are and what, your AQ averages to.
Yeah,
right?
I was surprised, and I'm not saying anything about myself wanting to figure this out, but I was surprised as I was going through it, going, well, of course that's a 5. Of course that's a 5. Of course that's a 5. I don't think it was just so obvious to me that there had to be 5s.
I wonder if it makes sense to have your wife take the test for you or something and score you on that and see like how adverse intelligent does she think you are?
What I did find interesting about the test, Bob, and we'll come to this a little bit later, there are 4 parts of your AQ score that we'll talk about. And what you don't know is which questions are relating to which part of the score.
Okay.
So then you realize, oh, I have a lot more this, but not this, like more D than I in the disc profile type example.
Okay.
But when Dr. Stoltz built this, as we were checking into the information, he came out with 3 people: quitters, campers, and climbers. I love it. Quitters, campers, climbers. Bob, you got to be able to figure out what a quitter is, right?
Yeah.
I mean, what do you think a quitter would be?
I don't know. It's probably like
Ben Kinney, who's not here.
Did he quit our podcast?
Quit on us. Walked right out.
It'd be those people that are like, they lead compromised lives, right? They're like easily broken by negative events or become hopeless. They're never going to, find the success they're looking for. Or they quickly quit things, right? They hit a barrier and they quit, or they're not trying to solve any problems. They're constantly bringing them up, right? Like those things are going to ultimately lead to like a miserable life.
Yeah, it sounds like Eeyore.
Yeah.
Right?
It sounds like that. Woe is me. Like, and in a minute, we'll break this down maybe a little bit further. But that quitter is just, and we all know this person, right? It's this happened to me again, and this happened, and I'm never going to be able to get out of this crappy job. Or, our friend Clint, what did Clint?
He called them the oh no's.
No no's, right?
Oh,
You're
no.
like, hey guys, we're going to do this. And they're like, oh no, here we go, right? I'm sure there's going to be all this problem, and that's going to happen. And I don't even know why we'd start, because we all know that profile.
Yeah, and in a business, they're the cancer to your business. They're the cancer to the culture of the business and all of that. Same thing in your life, right? If you have a person like that in your life, they're always pulling you down with them. So we got the quitters. Then we got the campers. So Bob, they're camping out, right? They're ready to fight to a point.
Yeah.
But they're not going to go that far, right? They're like, ow, it hurts. Okay, now I'm going to stop.
Sure.
I tried a little bit, right? They prefer that comfortable life, and negative experiences scare them. All right. And they're happy as long as things are going smoothly. So that person that seems to be happy, seems to be on top of the world because everything's going well for them. But as soon as COVID struck, the reality came. Or as soon as their relationship changed or they lost the job, everything changed for them completely. And Clint called those the
The
okays.
okays. Okay, yeah, we're on board. Okay, fine.
And sadly, that's probably majority of the population. We didn't find in our AQ research like a breakdown that it's 33%, 33%, 30%. Probably most of the people
But I
are
mean, I
campers.
think if you look at, you talked about it, people prefer a comfortable life and negative experiences scare them.
Yep.
I mean, that's most people.
Yep.
Isn't it? Like, I prefer a comfortable life. And there was definitely times in my life where, man, if something negative came up, I was like, I don't really want to deal with this, Gotten better at that over the years. And you run into enough adversity, you learn that you can build that
There
skill.
you go, right?
You build that skill and you realize, man, you know what? That was bad and that did happen, but I'm still here. I'm still good. Yeah, I think most people fall into this middle bucket.
Now, I love change. It's one of those things that I just look for change. When status quo is going, I don't want it to be the same again and again and again. I want change. I want something different. I want to keep changing and keep things happen. That's the people that have that quicker response to the adversity usually that comes along. We call these, according to Dr. Stoltz,
Climbers,
right? So Bob, talk to us a little bit about the climbers.
All right, so they're real achievers. Like at the end of the day, most of these people end up achieving because they're ready to fight until they get what they want. Like it doesn't matter what challenge is in front of them. They're somebody that's going to figure out another angle, another way to try it. Man, that didn't work. Well, let's try it this way. Right? Like they're not going to give up until that goal they've set out for themselves is achieved.
Yep.
It's just like they literally aren't going to be defeated. They're self-motivated. They're consistent in their efforts. A lot of times they're highly optimistic. I think of Ben. I've got this story that I tell of him where we were at this event. I've maybe shared this on the podcast before, but he said, hey, we're going to sell 100 of the widget, right? Whatever we were selling that day. And it was a 4-day event. And it might have been 200. It was actually 200 of the widget. And he comes in after the first day, comes kind of back, into the booth or whatever. And he's like, how many did we sell? And we're like, we sold 6. And he's like 6 out of 200 in the first day, right? Of 4. Like that wasn't 25% for the math majors out there. It was like 3%, right? So he's like, all right, what are we going to do different tomorrow? And so we go out the next day and we sell, I think we sold 6 more, right? So we've got 12 total. And he comes into the booth at the end of the day and he's like, how many did we get? And we're like, we got 12. And he's like, awesome, we're at 18 now. And we're like, no, we got 6 more. Like we're at 12. And he's like, okay, well, what are we going to do different tomorrow? What are we going to do? And so the next day we sold 30. And so we're sitting at 42 and we got to get to 200. We're 3/4 of the way through this thing. I think this was actually the very first time I'd ever been out with him, in this scenario. And I was pretty unsure. I was like, I don't know, man. We got a long ways to go. And he was adamant, no, we're going to get there tomorrow. We are going to get there tomorrow. And he's a climber.
Oh, yeah.
He was like, it didn't matter. I mean, all the rest of us were like, man, we're kind of getting kicked in the teeth here. And sometimes the climber, like Ben, in that scenario, he was like, no, we're all climbing. Get on here, right? We're all going to this goal tomorrow. That last day was probably one of the craziest sales days I've ever seen. We had people throwing credit cards at us. They were kicking us out of the, these events, Chad. They were kicking us out. The security's coming through. It's over. Everybody's got to leave. People are like, no, I got to sign it. I mean, we actually didn't hit the goal. I think we ended up 194 out of 200 or something like that. And he came in and he said at the end, he said, listen, you guys, first off, my real goal in my head was 140. He's like, I never intended we were going to sell 200, and he's like, but I always knew that last day, I just knew it was going to come together. And look, there was a lot of reasons why it shouldn't have, right? But he was not going to, he was going to fight. He didn't care. He was going to keep going. He was going to bring the rest of us along. I mean, he's a climber. He's a climber.
Absolutely. Right? He's a climber. And Clint teaches us that we call them the oh yeah.
Oh yes.
Right?
We're going to sell 200. Oh yeah. Let's do this.
And people are going to push for it. So, all right. So we've got the 3 types of people. You got your quitters, you got your campers, and you got your climbers. So Stoltz was stating that AQ is an acquired trait. As you even mentioned, Bob, the more and more you go through adversity, obviously probably the better you get at handling adversity. So it's easy for those quitters to become campers and those campers to become climbers and keep progressing up the ladder as they go through all of that. They can learn about it. To help quitters become campers and campers become climbers, Stoltz formulated what he called the lead sequence. And the lead sequence, Bob, for those out there who want to work on their adversity quotient, is listen to your response to adversity. So what do you take when I start with this and say, Bob, the L stands for listen to your response to adversity?
I guess I would take out of that, the idea that like when something happens, when something adverse comes up, right? Like, do I step back and because this happens all the time, right? You run into something, you're like, oh man, that didn't work. And like, do I actually slow down enough to realize or to kind of step outside myself and look at myself and say, like, how did you respond there? Right? Because I think, and look, I don't know where we're going here, but I think that if I wanted to change behavior, I'd have to understand that behavior. Why did I do it that way? Why did I back off of that thing when the going got tough? Like, to really just kind of understand the way I'm dealing with adversity today.
Okay. And I think you're going to give me that exact same answer in the very near future here when I ask you something. So I'm going to just add to it that I think when he came up with listen to your response to adversity, he literally meant listen. Like, is the first thing out of your mouth like, ah, crap?
Okay.
Or is the first thing out of your mouth, we got this, no problem, right? Quitters are going to say, I'm out. Campers are going to say, and then the climbers, of course, are going to say, we got this, let's go.
But again, it's that awareness of like, how do you deal with, and then you're saying just literally listen to
I think he means literally listen, only because when I did this research, I know what's coming with the A, and I think you're going to give me that same answer.
I think you could extend that because, like you said, it's listen, right? What's actually coming out of your mouth, but that might be what's your body language.
Yep.
How do your shoulders slump over when you hit the adversity? Or are you like chest out, like let's do this, right? So yeah.
Okay.
I can buy your definition there.
All right. So to continue moving along, let's get to the E, which is establish accountability, because climbers always have accountability. So to move ourselves from a quitter to a camper to a climber, we need establishing accountability. What do you think Stoltz was talking about as he mentions this as the E?
I would think that like to me, if I'm looking at like some adverse situation that happened, I'd want to try to figure out like, where's my accountability in that?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So am I able to say, because again, the quitters, what do they, this is my fault. There's nothing I can do to control this. I don't have any, this just happens to me.
Right. Always.
Right. This just happens to me. Like, man, I got the worst luck.
Yep.
But the climber would say, okay, this happened. What was my role in this? How could I have impacted this different? Right. Yep. And just establish some accountability that I did actually have a role in that.
Okay. And then moving forward, I'm going to think establishing accountability actually meaning, and what am I going to be accountable to do as I move forward and work on becoming better at accepting this and having a higher AQ score.
Okay.
All right. The A is analyze the evidence, which I think was a lot of what you were talking about at the beginning. It's like, okay, I'm going to look around. I'm going to see where my fingerprints are on this. I'm going to see how I'm reacting to this. I'm going to see everything that's going on. What else do you think comes along with analyze the evidence as we're in an adverse situation?
I mean, just what you said, just what I said earlier. I think I jumped way ahead there, right? It's.
I told you did.
Yeah, it's what just happened there.
Right.
Let me just step back and kind of realize what just happened. Because a lot of times when we hit adversity, we're like, oh man, that sucked. And it's just on to the next thing, right? We don't ever take the time to kind of do the autopsy, right? To analyze what just happened there.
That's a great one.
Yeah,
taking time to do
the
that
autopsy on this bad boy, right?
Okay, and then the D, so we've got listen to your response to adversity, establish accountability, analyze the evidence, and then Bob, do something.
Do something.
Do something.
Do something good? Or just
that would be even better, right? But just anything, if you're dealing with adversity, you got to do something, right? So it's taking that action. Maybe it's what that accountability is that you've put in front of yourself, taking that action. It's doing something to show yourself that you can handle adversity and adverse situations.
And a lot of times, like if you thought about these all in a sequence, then, right, it's like, okay, how did I react to that? Wow, man, that wasn't very good. My shoulders were slumped and I was oh-noing, right? So, all right, let me regain a little bit of confidence in this thing, right? Establish some accountability that I did actually have an ability to influence that situation, right? Analyze why it went the way that it even went that time. And then, I think these all kind of play together, especially those last two, right? Now I'm going to do something based on that analysis.
Yes.
But I'm not just going to be like, all right, just do anything. I'm going to say like, I was trying to accomplish this thing. It didn't happen. Like, how did I even react to the fact it didn't happen, right? What can I do like what can I actually own? Where's my accountability and how can I change it? Analyze what actually happened and then do something based on that. This is a really good framework from this guy.
Yeah, and folks, remember that it's lead, not Leah, right? It's not listen, establish, analyze.
Right.
Okay, we're good.
Yeah.
No, and do something, because if you don't do anything, you're not making progress. So, Bob, I hinted at this earlier, that there's 4 dimensions to that AQ, that adversity quotient. And Dr. Stoltz would probably get along great with us because he loves to come up with acronyms for everything. And it seems that everything we talk about is always in acronyms and stuff. But he described it as CORE, CORE. Okay. And this is what I was saying as I took the test. What I found after was like question 1 was a C question of CORE. Question 2 was an R question. So they weren't in order necessarily. But then at the end, I was able to break down my score and get my C, my O, my R, and my E score.
Okay.
So let's talk about the 4 dimensions of adversity quotient. And the first is control. Okay. So this is the extent to which individuals are able to manage their lives and control the negative consequences before they get worse. Talk a little bit about what I just threw at you, and I love doing this to you because you didn't prep on this. I did this research, so I'm throwing you right out there. Bob, talk about that a little bit.
So the extent to which individuals are able to manage their life and control the negative consequences before getting worse.
Yes.
I mean, I would assume that people that have higher AQs like would perceive that they have like more control and influence in a situation, in an adverse situation, because that's what we're talking about here, right?
Yep.
Than people with a lower AQ. So those quitters are like we were saying earlier, they're like, there's nothing I could have done. That just happened to me. Like, even in situations that appear overwhelming or out of their hands, that person with a high AQ is going to find like some facet of that situation that they can influence or control in some way, right? They're going to try to find some ownership in it. Whereas those with lower AQs are going to go, well, there's nothing I could have done anyway, right? So there's no sense in even giving this another shot. Like I give up. Like this is out of my hands.
So some of us might be really poor at the control part of this AQ score, but really high in other parts, or we might be really high in, well, I can find what I can control, yet I'm weak at these other pieces of it. And you already said the word that's the O of that core, and that's ownership.
Okay.
So Bob, again, going back to almost his lead message, right? Ownership meaning to which you are accountable for your actions and are willing to take responsibility to make adverse situations better. So ownership, the second dimension of AQ, the extent to which you are accountable for your actions and are willing to take responsibilities to make adverse situations better. What do you take from me reading that to you?
I guess when I hear that, I think like people with high AQs are going to do something about it. Like they're going to say, look, this might not have even been my fault, right? I might not have even been the reason that the company ran into this roadblock or has this adversity, but they're going to like take ownership of it anyway, right? And the low AQ person's going to go, yeah, this didn't work out. That wasn't even my fault. That was actually Jimmy's fault over there. He's the one that wrote this document, or he's like, they're going to find some way to deflect the accountability. Right? They're probably also going to feel like victimized or helpless. There's nothing I could have done, or they got one over on me, or we all know these people. Every single one of us in this room and everybody listening to this has worked with one of those people. You had a sibling that was one of these people. Somebody in your world is one of these people, and you guys can all probably think of that. Like we've all got that one that we keep them around.
Don't say their name, Bob.
We love them still, right? We can still love them even if they refuse to take accountability and
taking that ownership, right? That O, which is that ownership quadrant of this. The third one, I thought this was really, really interesting. The third one, the R of core, is reach.
Okay.
And what Dr. Stoltz was meaning on this, it's the extent to which the challenges you face reach other aspects of your life. So it measures how capable you are to resist such challenges from affecting other areas, like when you have a bad day at work, do you go home and take it out on the family? Or when you're in a fight with, as our friend Ben would say, your honey bunny, does that impact work? And does it impact your health? And how do all those things come together? So, Bob, talk what you think. I can see you as we're together on this. Your eyes are doing the wow, right?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people might, if they took the quiz, score high on the C or high on the O, because, okay, a lot of our audience are people who say, no, it's on me. I'm going to fix this. But all of a sudden, I think a lot of those people might have a low reach part of the AQ score because they allow it to come into every area of their life.
Yeah, I mean, that one's, it's almost self-explanatory, right? Are you letting these, that little, that deal that fell apart today at work, like, are you bringing that home with you? Look, this is hard, right? It's really hard to just shut it off when you come in the door. It's one of the reasons why Ben has us all thinking about wealth, right? Because when you're building wealth, you stop thinking about those transactional things that happen throughout the day, that like if one of those transactional things falls apart, like, right? So some of this has to do with just your overall health in every aspect.
Yeah. Right.
It's like, I'm going to be better off. I'm going to be easier to not let that blown up deal bleed into my family life tonight. If I wasn't relying on that blown up deal to like feed the kids and pay the mortgage.
Right.
Right. But man, this one's really hard. I'd be interested to kind of understand how people even get better at this. And maybe it is kind of setting those better foundations, right? Where it's like those little things don't mean so much to you, right? That missed deal doesn't mean so much to you.
Well, I remember when I went through my divorce, I got no secrets, right? We agreed to that being on the podcast here. We're not going to hide any of that stuff. When I went through my divorce and financial troubles at the same time, basically, that's when my health went to crap, right? I had a horrible reach score in my adversity quotient at that time because I let things bothering me here then become a problem there, which then became a problem over here in my life. I wasn't able to compartmentalize.
Yeah.
Now, I remember Nita and I doing a small group study, and I don't remember the book or the video off the top of my head. I'd have to do some research. It popped in. And the speaker talked about how men and women's brains are wired differently. And basically what he comes down to is he says, men, you have drawers and boxes in your head. And you'll go into a certain box and nothing else exists. Like when you open your basketball box for you, Bob.
Right. Sunday football, watching the Seahawks box. Like
nothing else matters and nothing else happens. And when the Seahawks blow it or whatever, as last year you'd come in and be like, they kill me, wait until the end. You close that box and it goes away.
Sure.
Right. So we could go into different boxes and it's easier for men maybe to have a higher reach score because we can compartmentalize. Whereas he described women's brains are wired more like a bowl of spaghetti, that you pull on this noodle over here and that noodle over there is moving and this noodle and that move, and it is all connected. So I'm not saying anything. I'm just taking something I've learned.
Hey, look, this is true for my wife and I. She's always thinking about everything. She's always, and it's all tied, and I'll say one thing and she'll bring something else up. And I'm like, wait, what? Like, that's not what we were talking about. She's like, yeah, but it reminded me that,
yep.
But I'm like, I'm a box. I'm a bunch of drawers.
So guys, we might have an advantage with this reach. Ladies, you might need to figure out some way to compartmentalize a little bit more if you were to figure out your reach score. So we've got control, we've got ownership, we've got reach. And Bob, the E is endurance. Okay, so this is the extent to which you're able and capable of tolerating pain while still being optimistic and believing that something positive is waiting for you on the other side, right? So it's, can you push through? Can you get into this COVID world and be like, you know what? It's going to be awesome when it comes out the other side. Can you get into, I've lost my job, and instead of being depressed, it's going to be awesome when I find that next or build that next opportunity, or this is finally that time for me. Bob, think about that toleration of pain while still being optimistic for the future, how long you can hold that for. Anything coming to mind with you on that?
Oh, man. Basically every business venture I've ever been in my entire life.
Sure.
Like we're building something here with Ben. It's called Place. It doesn't matter, but this is a big thing. This has been it's been years in the making. This has been a lot of falling down and look, he's a guy that sets a big vision, and it's really easy to be optimistic about a big, crystal clear vision. That's one of the reasons why our mission, vision, and values are so important to us, and we had an episode about those,
sure
right?
Did.
But it's this idea that like, we're doing this for a reason. There's a crystal clear picture out here of what we're trying to accomplish. And it's easier to continue to be optimistic and go through that pain because you know, like, man, this thing is on the other side. Now, I'll tell you, and I think just based on the word endurance, this is something you build up over time. I can remember the first time that it's hard to, like, we had a big deal fall apart in I was probably 30 years old. This was 15 years ago or whatever. It was a multi-million-dollar deal. It was, we were days away from having, more resources and honestly more like personal wealth than I've ever, it would have been, multiples of 100, right? Like, and it fell apart in 2 days. Like that, it took me months to get over that. It was devastating, but because I've been through that and that company, it's not like I didn't, go to sleep for a month or not come into work for a month. Like we got up and came in the next day but it was hard, Chad. Sure. It was hard.
Well, Bob, living up here in the Pacific Northwest and the image that everybody has of the Pacific Northwest, which is absolutely true. You should never move here, right? It's cloudy and rains all the time, right? So think about that, the endurance that's needed to go through those gray months that we have in the Pacific Northwest, knowing that on the other side, there's going to be that one perfect week that we all look forward to every year, that it's coming. What's our endurance? And I'm thinking about Ben talking about how many times do we climb a mountain and we get to the top, and what do we see when we get there?
Higher
peak. Now we see the next peak already that we couldn't even see before and realize. Someone with a high endurance score is going to be like, okay, I can still believe that there's something at the top. Whereas someone with that low endurance score is going to be like, no, I climbed this much. You're lucky.
Mountain? Yeah,
right. The quitter didn't even get started. The camper got to that first peak and went, no, I'm not going higher. The climber, of course, climbs all the way.
Again, we got to go back to the story I told just a few minutes ago about Ben. He had some endurance there. It was like the first day stunk.
Right.
The second day stunk. He could have very easily came out on the third day and been like, yeah, let's cut the goal in half. And we're, no, he's got the endurance to just kind of tolerate that pain, right? Those first couple days were painful.
I can imagine. All right. So one of the things we like to do at Win, Make, Give is we don't like to just tell you about things. We like to give you a plan to get better, to push forward, to build your wealth, your health, your happiness, to create the leadership, the legacy, whatever it is you're working on. Bob, let's give some ways people can work on their AQ and boost their adaptability. So give me one that comes to mind for you on a way people could work on improving that adaptability so their AQ goes up.
How about limiting distractions and maybe learning to focus so you can determine like which adaptations to make, like where do you need to adjust or what is that adversity that you want to try to overcome, but really get focused on it.
Okay.
Right?
So getting those distractions out of the way, being able to say, hey, here's the thing that's adverse in my world. Here's the adversity in front of me. Focus on it so I can say, here's what I've got to do.
Look, a lot of times, like, I guess you have to think about why did you even run into that adversity in the first place, right? You ran into that adversity because on the other side of it is like the goal, the dream, it's not the end, right? But it's like that thing that you're trying to do is on the other side of that adversity.
See, Bob, you just proved right there you're a climber. Because all of the audience members that are actually quitters are saying, I didn't run into it. It hit me. I was just sitting here and it just came and hit me, Bob. I didn't have anything. That just proved you were a climber because you're looking for the adversity because you know it's between you and that goal.
Yeah, and I know on the other side of it is that goal. Like we're always going to hit adversity when we run into a goal. And so like the question is, are you going to stop or are you going to figure out how to get past it? And if you're going to say like, okay, I need to get past this, then you have to focus on it, right? You have to focus on it. You have to maybe look at it from a different angle, limit the distractions, right? Like just have a focus. Like, I don't know, there's no other way to put it. You've got to decide, like, I want to focus on this thing. I got to look at it. Maybe I got to bring in some help. Maybe I need another person. Maybe I need another opinion.
Folks, I wish you were in the podcast studio with me because Bob is actually attacking his microphone from different angles while he's doing this because he's focusing and seeing what adaptation he needs to make. So if his voice is doing weird things, don't blame Dave. That was Bob having a little fun there and really getting into it. Bob, I'll give you one way to boost the your adaptability for our audience. I'll get over that word. I have an adverse moment with that word there. It's ask uncomfortable questions, like maybe for a pay raise or ask that girl out, or ask that guy out, whatever it is, because it's going to help you develop courage and it's going to make you realize that fear is just something that you can overcome like that. It's that 20 seconds of, power will get you through any moment sort of thing. So it's ask uncomfortable questions. That's going to help you improve your AQ score.
This has been a really big one for me. And I didn't know about AQ until we had that interview recently, right? But over my professional career, just getting outside of what I'm comfortable with, there's been a number of times when before working with Ben, by the way, but where I thought, man, I deserve more money than I'm worth here, and they should come give me a raise,
Yep.
That's never happened, by the way, to me anyway. Nobody's ever prior to working with Ben, that had never happened to me, but nobody just ever swooped by my desk and was like, hey man, you've been working hard, you need a raise. That doesn't happen, right? I can remember the first time I asked for a raise. I was definitely the fear was real, Chad.
Sure.
I was like, they could say, no, in fact, you're fired.
Right. We've been looking for a reason to fire you, and that was it.
That's
Thanks,
it,
Bob.
right? You need more money? Well, we can't afford it. You're out of here.
Yep.
So yeah, normalizing fear I think it's really important.
Okay. So folks, Bob's told you to limit distractions and focus so you can figure out what adaptation to make. I'm telling you to ask those uncomfortable questions so that you can normalize fear. Bob, give me one more thing maybe that the audience could do to improve their AQ before we wrap this one up.
How about be curious about things that fascinate you? And curious maybe more than just Googling the answer, right? Call somebody that does that thing really well and ask them some questions, right? Talk to somebody that's we do a lot of this, that we call it R&D.
Yeah.
Right?
Rip off and duplicate.
If we're hitting adversity somewhere, we're not just going to be well, let's just keep running our head into this wall. We're going to be let's step back. Let's analyze. Is there anybody we know that's done this before? Maybe we can get some advice from them. And that's not always in Google, by the way, right?
No.
Sometimes you can get some answers in there, but a lot of times it requires you being curious enough to go out and find an expert, right? Find somebody that's been there before and done that before and dealt with that particular adversity before.
And that'll help you, of course, as you're saying, figure out ways to adapt, ways to improve that adversity quotient because you're used to dealing with challenges when they come to you because you come from that place of curiosity.
Yeah.
Okay. So we just took you through some AQ. Bob and I wanted to learn a little bit about it, and we just took you along for the journey. We know that most of you out there are probably climbers. If you're not a climber, it's okay. Maybe you're at a point in your life where you are a quitter, or maybe you're just a camper. Well, follow the lead method to be able to get yourself moving along that. Listen to your response, establish accountability, analyze the evidence, and do something about it. Now, what I want you to do is I want you to come into our Facebook group, facebook.com/group/win.
You're so good at that transition every
Thank
time.
you, Bob. Thank you very much. To facebook.com/groups/win-make-give, because here's what I want you to tell us when we post about this episode. Of the 4 areas, control, ownership, reach, and endurance, which one challenges you the most for your AQ score? Are you weak in the control area? Are you weak in ownership? Is it reach and you're letting things impact all areas of your life? Or is it in the endurance and you can push through for a little while, you just don't have that full endurance to complete the marathon of adversity that you're going through? We want to hear from you, so make sure you come join us in the group. And until our next episode, on behalf of Bob, on behalf of myself, on behalf of Ben.
No,
not
if
Ben.
If he's here, it can be on behalf of him, but not today.
All right, well then, on behalf of Dave as well.
That's right.
We want to remind you, get out there and do good.